Welcome to Module 4, Risk Assessment and Analysis Methodologies. In Module 3, we established the fundamental concepts of cybersecurity risk management, outlining the life cycle from identification through monitoring. You learned the core vocabulary: threats, vulnerabilities, impact, likelihood, and understood the importance of defining risk appetite. Now we're ready to zoom in on a critical phase of that life cycle: risk analysis and assessment. Simply identifying risks isn't enough. You need practical methods to evaluate them, to understand how likely they are to occur and how severe the consequences might be. This assessment process is the engine that drives prioritization and informs your risk treatment decisions. Without effective assessment, your risk management efforts might be unfocused, inefficient, or misaligned with the actual dangers your organization faces. In this module, you will explore the practical how-to of risk assessment. We will compare the two primary approaches, qualitative and quantitative analysis, examining their strengths, weaknesses, and appropriate use cases. You'll learn more about specific methods for gathering the necessary information, such as vulnerability scanning and penetration testing, and how to leverage threat intelligence effectively. We will also introduce advanced techniques like threat modeling and attack surface management for a more proactive and comprehensive view of risk. Finally, we'll discuss how to use the assessment results to prioritize risks for action. Consider this module your toolkit for dissecting and measuring cybersecurity risk, enabling you to move from simply knowing risks exist to understanding their significance for your organization, whether it's operating in the bustling environment of Lagos or anywhere else. Upon successful completion of this module, you should be able to compare and contrast qualitative and quantitative risk assessment methodologies, including their respective pros and cons. Describe various methods used to identify threats and vulnerabilities as inputs to the assessment process, e.g. scanning, testing, threat intelligence. Outline a practical step-by-step process for conducting a cybersecurity risk assessment. Explain the purpose and basic application of techniques like threat modeling and attack surface management (ASM) in risk assessment. Understand different approaches for prioritizing cybersecurity risks based on assessment results to guide treatment efforts. Qualitative versus quantitative risk assessment. Once you have identified potential risks from Module 3, the core task is to assess their likelihood and impact. There are two main philosophical approaches to this: qualitative and quantitative. Understanding both is crucial because they serve different purposes and have different requirements. 1. Qualitative risk assessment using descriptive scales. This is often the most common starting point for risk assessment due to its relative simplicity. Qualitative assessment relies on descriptive scales and expert judgment rather than precise numerical values. How it works: just like the diagram displayed on your screen, you define subjective scales for likelihood and impact, e.g. high, medium, low, or perhaps a 1 to 5 scale. Then, for each identified risk, use available information, experience, and informed judgment to assign a rating on each scale. Example of likelihood scale: high, very likely expected to occur within a year; medium, possible, may occur within 1 to 3 years; low, unlikely, may occur 3 years. Example of impact scale: high, severe disruption, major financial loss, e.g. 100 million Nigerian nairas; significant regulatory penalty under NDPA, GDPR; major reputational damage. Medium, moderate disruption, significant financial loss, e.g. 5 million Nigerian nairas; minor regulatory issues, some reputational harm. Low, minor disruption, minimal financial loss, negligible regulatory reputational impact. Risk matrix: the likelihood and impact ratings are often plotted on a risk matrix or heat map. This visual tool helps determine an overall risk level, e.g. a high likelihood, high impact risk falls into a critical or red zone, while low falls into low or green. Now look at the advantages of qualitative risk assessment: simpler and faster, requires less complex data collection and calculation, widely applicable, can be used even when precise financial data is unavailable, good for initial screening, effective for quickly identifying and prioritizing the most significant risks that warrant further attention, facilitates communication, easier for non-technical stakeholders to understand relative risk levels. Let's also take a look at the disadvantages of qualitative risk assessment. Subjective, relies heavily on the experience and potential biases of the assessors. Different teams might rate the same risk differently. Difficult comparison, hard to objectively compare risks with different types of impact. E.g., is a high reputational risk worse than a medium financial risk? No cost-benefit analysis doesn't easily support financial justification, ROI, for implementing controls, as costs and benefits aren't directly compared in monetary terms. Qualitative assessment is invaluable for getting a broad overview and prioritizing risks quickly, especially in organizations starting their risk management journey or those where detailed financial data for impacts is hard to obtain. 2. Quantitative risk assessment. Quantitative assessment aims to assign objective numerical values, typically monetary, to the components of risk. It allows for more rigorous analysis and direct comparison. How it works: this approach involves estimating asset value AV, the value of the asset being protected, often expressed in currency, e.g. naira, dollars. This can be complex for intangible assets like data or reputation. Exposure factor EF, the percentage of the asset's value expected to be lost if a specific threat event occurs. E.g., if ransomware encrypts critical data, the EF might be 80% due to recovery costs and lost productivity. Single loss expectancy, SLE, the expected monetary loss each time a specific risk event occurs, calculated as SLE equal to AV versus EF. Annualized rate of occurrence, ARO, the estimated frequency per year with which the specific threat event is expected to occur. E.g., a RO of 0.5 means once every 2 years, a RO of 2 means twice per year. This is often the hardest value to estimate accurately. Annualized loss expectancy, ALE, the total expected monetary loss for that specific risk over 1 year, calculated as ALE equal to SLE versus ARO. Cost-benefit analysis, the ALE figure provides a powerful tool. You can compare the ALE of a risk before implementing a control to the estimated ALE after implementing the control. The difference represents the potential annual benefit cost savings of the control, which can then be compared to the control's annual cost to determine ROI. Advantages of quantitative risk assessment: objective and measurable, provides numerical results that are easier to compare and track over time. Supports financial decision-making, directly enables cost-benefit analysis for security investments, speaking the language of business and finance. Clear prioritization: risks can be clearly ranked based on their financial impact, ALE. Improved communication with executives: financial metrics are often more easily understood and impactful for senior leadership and boards. Disadvantages of quantitative risk assessment: data intensive, requires significant effort to gather accurate data for AV, EF, and especially ARO. Historical data might be scarce or unreliable. Complex calculations can be mathematically intensive and may require specialized tools or expertise. Difficult for intangibles: assigning credible monetary values to assets like reputation, customer trust, or intellectual property is challenging and often subjective, undermining the perceived objectivity. False precision: the numerical results can imply a level of accuracy that might not be justified given the uncertainties in the input data. Quantitative assessment is most valuable for analyzing high-priority risks identified through qualitative assessment, justifying major security investments, comparing different mitigation options financially, or where regulatory requirements mandate financial risk analysis.